I'm going to show you exactly how to avoid the most common mistake that learners make when writing the NEBOSH open book exam, and obviously how to avoid making that mistake. So to kick things off, what I want you to do is let's take a look at a sort of mini scenario. So on the screen now, there's a little scenario. Obviously, scenarios in the real exam are much longer than this, sort of 3 or 4 pages. You're the newly appointed Health and Safety Advisor for Rapid Parcels Limited. Actually, what I'll do is I'll leave you to pause the video and have a read of that scenario. After you've read the scenario, take a look at this example exam question, typical of the type that you would get in an open book exam. Again, I'll let you read the question carefully. Okay, after you've read the scenario and you've read the question, take a look now at a couple of exam answers to the same question. So they're 2 different answers to the same question. I've arranged them like that so that you can see both at the same time. Now what I want you to do is have a read and see if you can work out which one of those 2 answers would have scored more points. What I can tell you is that one of them scored the maximum, 5 points, the other one scored 0 points. And see if you can work out which one is which, but also why you think one way or the other. Now what I'll do is show you the mark scheme. Again, it's kind of like a mini mark scheme, if you like. There's a maximum of 5 marks available. And in fact, what I'll do is I'll get it such that you can see the mark scheme. Hopefully you can see that. Can I make that any bigger? So now that you've got the mark scheme and both questions, see whether you can figure it out based on the mark scheme, which one scored the most points. Okay, so hopefully you figured out that the question on the left scored 0 points, the question on the right scored maximum points. Why then? What went wrong with this question on the left? Because when you read it, it all looks pretty good. Vehicle and pedestrian interaction is dangerous because pedestrians are vulnerable compared to vehicles. Difficult to disagree with that. Reversing manoeuvres are especially hazardous because the driver has restricted visibility. Sounds okay to me. Increasing the chance of collision. Poor training can also contribute to accidents if drivers or pedestrians do not understand safe systems of work. Sounds common sense. Busy workplaces further increase risks because more movements create more opportunities for an incident. Okay. To manage this, organisations need good separation, training, supervision and vehicle safety equipment. None of that you could read and say, well, that's wrong. None of it is wrong, but it's still scored 0 points. And when you look at the mark scheme, you can see why. What does the mark scheme say? And let's look at the mark scheme and let's look at the question. Can we give a mark against no marked pedestrian walkways? Do they say that in the... No, it doesn't. It's not there. Pedestrians distracted by handheld scanners, it's not there. Inexperienced new driver, it's not in there. Faulty reversing alarm is not in there. Lack of training due to manager refusing further sessions is not in there. All this stuff in the mark scheme is all in the scenario. Hence the marks for the other question, the other answer. Vehicle and pedestrian interaction is high risk at this depot because there are no marked pedestrian walkways. Okay, that is a mark against that. Pedestrians are walking across the loading bay while looking at handheld scanners, so they may not notice approaching vans. That is a mark against that one. So the examiner can give the mark. The examiners always have to be able to say, well, which part of the mark scheme did you use, to give the mark. Okay, now what's happening, I think, with a lot of learners, before we continue, if you're considering a move towards working in health and safety, it's absolutely essential that you're well prepared. That's why I want to take a quick second to let you know that you can study for the IOSH Managing Safely or the NEBOSH General Certificate, both national and international versions, online with us at Stockwell Safety. So if you're ready to take the first step towards a rewarding career in health and safety, see the links in the description to explore our industry-leading e-learning, IOSH and NEBOSH courses. Is that when it comes to exam day, what they do is they use the textbook. So I'm using this as to represent the textbook, the theory. You'll have a textbook, or if it's an online course or whatever, your materials, your training materials, all the stuff that's in that answer, you'll find it in here. What I want to emphasize is you don't want to be using that extensively on exam day. You use this building in the run up to exam day. Does that make sense? That the textbook, the theory, is or should not be your primary source of information on exam day. What you should be using is the scenario. This is the scenario. Print it out. This is what I want you to use as your primary source of information on exam day. Now I get it. It's the book. You've had the book for weeks by the time that exam day rolls around. You're used to the book. You're familiar with the book, hopefully, because you've studied it. The scenario, you won't see that until exam day. You're not familiar with it. That's kind of the point. You're not familiar with it. You've not seen the information. But this is where all the marks are. I can't emphasize that enough. This is where all the marks are. In here, most of them anyway. The vast majority of the points are going to be 90% or more are going to be in the scenario. The idea is you use you know the theory. I'm not saying to disregard this, and yes, you might need to dive into it now and again to help you answer questions. That's fine. I'm not saying completely ignore this. I'm just saying don't use this as your primary source of information when answering the exam questions. You use this on the build up to exam day. Use this as your primary information source on exam day. And that way you're going to be able to ensure that you get the points. Let's carry on. Might as well now, we're here. Carry on with the rest of it. Inexperienced new driver was the next mark available. Let's see if that is picked up. Risk has increased further because the new driver on his second day keeps stopping and repositioning, making his movements unpredictable. Because they've mentioned the new driver on his second day, that's a mark. I can give a mark there. That mark is against that. One of the vans also has a faulty reversing alarm, reducing pedestrian awareness. That is a mark against that. The situation is made worse by the manager refusing to schedule additional training, meaning workers are unlikely to be fully briefed on safe movement around vehicles. That is a mark against that item on the mark scheme. And when you look at these answers as well, they are not just one sentences. There's usually a couple of sentences so that the point is being made, but also evidence from the scenario is also being used to strengthen that point. This is the PERS or PERS system that we've covered in other videos. So I hope that video has been helpful. Let me know in the comments, and if you've got your exam coming up, as always, very best of luck with it.